I'm Mark Szakonyi, Executive Editor of JOC.com, the online arm of the Journal of Commerce. I'm here today with Jim Newsome, President and CEO of South Carolina Ports Authority. Jim, thanks for being with us today. Jim, you had a strong year in the fiscal year ending June. Charleston saw some strong traffic growth. Some of that was due to some West Coast port diversions. With those behind us, how is next year looking?
I think that we see overall world trade slowing a bit. And that combined with the fact that we're up against some tougher comparisons against this current year versus the year before, I think that we'll see flat to single-digit growth for the next few months, and then probably a stronger spring. We have strength in the automotive industry. That's been decisive for us, both on the import and export side. But the exports are weak. Exports overall are weakening a little bit. So it'll be a bit more modest year. I still think the Southeast ports will grow twice the U.S. port market in general terms because of population growth and manufacturing growth.
Jim, if I recall correctly, there's going to be a new car manufacturing plant opening up in the area. How is that going to impact Port of Charleston's container volume?
I think manufacturing is decisive to the growth of our port. We've got 5 manufacturers that use our port that are responsible for about 10% of our overall container volume. And they've invested a lot in facilities. You know, $1 billion is not an uncommon investment. And the advantage of manufacturers, they import and they export. So Volvo Cars is another new manufacturer. They'll import over 20,000 containers and they'll export probably 50,000 setup vehicles. So there's no substitute for manufacturing investment in the profile of the growth of a port.
With the U.S. natural gas boom, we're seeing a huge growth in plastic resin production and the export of those materials. I understand Port of Charleston is angling to get a little bit of that business. Can you walk me through how that would work?
Well, yeah, in 2017, it's sort of a back to the future issue. I mean, there was a lot of plastics production historically in Texas and Louisiana. With more expensive price of fossil fuel, a lot of that went to the Middle East. And then when the natural gas price crashed, a lot of that manufacturing is coming back to the U.S. So by the start of 2017, they're projected to be incremental 200,000 containers a year of plastics and resin that would be exported. It's really a net addition of exports. And while that principally cost-wise would want to move over Houston and New Orleans, the thought is that there's probably not enough east-west ship capacity in those ports to handle that volume. So a lot of the traders and producers and transloaders that work in that segment are looking to move some of that freight over the Southeast, and the Southeast is the next most logical gateway to the U.S. Gulf to move that cargo. And we have a good supply of empty containers and a good supply of ship space.
We're hearing rumblings from the container line industry that we could be seeing up to 14,000 TEU vessels call East Coast ports as soon as next year. How is the Port of Charleston preparing for these larger vessels so we don't see a flare-up in congestion that we saw at other ports?
Well, I think it is a fact that if you look at the order books of the largest ships, 18,000 TEU ships at 14,000 TEU ships have to come to the East Coast, and sooner rather than later. I mean, 2 major lines have said pretty clearly they'll deploy 14,000 TEU ships to the East Coast as soon as they can. I think East Coast is different than West Coast. The ships call multiple ports. There's not as much, demand on the number of moves in one port as it would be in a place like LA and Long Beach. So we think that we can handle the large ships efficiently, but every dimension of a large ship changes. Certainly harbor depth is an issue. Those ships draw 48 feet of water fully loaded. You need a good harbor. You need proper air draft, which we have today. You also need the proper air draft on cranes. So we've historically had 115-foot high cranes. We're now buying 150-foot high cranes to handle the height and the outreach on these big ships. So it's a significant driver in our investment profile is handling big container ships.
And when do you expect to take delivery of those cranes?
We'll have the cranes by August. We did some acceptance testing on those over the weekend in Shanghai, actually, and they're very technologically advanced, and our operators really like them.
Considering that the deepening project hasn't been completed, how will you be able to handle those up to 14,000 TEU vessels?
We currently have the deepest harbor in the Southeast by 5 to 6 feet of effective draft. We've really sped along our deepening project. We were able, with the Army Corps of Engineers, driving that study, to complete the study in under 4 years, which is a record. So we'll start the construction on our harbor in 2017 and hope to have it, and we should have it finished by no later than the end of 2019. So we can handle the big ships on the tide today. We can handle 48 feet of draft with significant tidal restriction. We think that will be enough to get us by until we can realize the full capability of our harbor.
Well, Jim, thanks for taking the time to share with what you're seeing at the Port of Charleston, and best of luck for next year.
Mark, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I've been speaking with Jim Newsome, CEO and President of South Carolina Ports Authority. For more updates on the Port of Charleston and other East Coast ports, keep reading JOC.com.